As a lifelong geography nerd and absolute transit whore, it ties me directly to the urbanist communities online because sprawl has definitely got to stop. And transit, mass transit, of course, is a massive key to ensure that we can strike a healthy, happy balance in our development patterns and urbanism of our cities and ensure that everybody's interconnected, everybody has equal access to transportation options throughout the entirety of the metropolitan areas, especially of our major metros and cities, and to thus help us further increase urbanization in the sense of density within our already developed regions. I have had something that I've had in a concept for a long time, and it's about damn time I made a video on it. I've been meaning to for a long time, and I finally got around to doing it because this is that video. This is my initial prototype for at least a baseline example of the concept I have for how we should alter our zoning laws in Canada and the United States so that we can increase and encourage and even potentially reward and subsidize massively increasing density of our developments and our buildings, but also to maintain and strike that happy balance between that and, of course, protecting and defending the currently existing single family housing and zones from being taken out and replaced with higher density housing. So, in example, because I am from the Portland metropolitan area of Oregon, we're going to use the Portland, Vancouver metropolitan area as our example. But at the moment, this is, again, basically my first prototype. And again, this is just more as an example so that people can refer to this when they see my comments on these videos so that hopefully they can understand where I'm coming from and what I'm really meaning when I say this. Google Earth is the perfect tool for this. So as you can see, I have color coded each individual city in the Portland, Vancouver metropolitan area so that you know which city is which in these development patterns. Except for, of course, as you can tell, Vancouver and Washougal. I figured I might as well throw all of the Vancouver metro into just one color code. But everything else is, as you can tell, color coded to each city or city region. So let's start out with the side of the metro area that I'm most familiar with because I grew up here and I still live here. And that is in the west side. I'm originally from Aloha, South Aloha specifically. So in example, this is the downtown Hillsborough core. This is just one concept. I usually explain it as in there's rings, right? So in this case, this isn't even technically complete because along the major thoroughfares, most specifically in this case, TV Highway, that's Waltz Valley Highway, also known past, I believe it's Watson or maybe it's Lombard. It turns into Canyon Road. Farmington turns into Beaverton Hillsdale. Because I'm from the west side, further west than that, we're of course going to consistently, in all my videos, refer to it strictly as Farmington Road and TV Highway. So along TV Highway, all the way through, of course, even to where it turns into Capitol Highway, we're going to obviously have a full higher density core along that entire route. So this urban core, this 8 to 15 stories concept, would likely stick to this point, except in the slightly lower density areas, I would think 5 to 10 stories makes them more sense, especially between the Reedville and Aloha region of the corridor. But once you enter Beaverton, of course, as you can see, it's another 8 to 15 stories. And then same through here would likely be 8 to 15 stories, maybe halfway through or all the way through. You can tell this is, of course, going to be 8 to 15 stories as well along the Sunset Corridor of Beaverton. This is 8 to 15 stories, of course, just like the downtown core for Hills Burrito. You get the idea. So Tigard, an example, 4 to 10 stories. Lake Oswego, 6 to 12. 12 in Durham, 4 to 10. Sherwood, 4 to 10. It's basically according to the development levels of the surrounding region itself that would predetermine these codes. So the city central core of Portland obviously is going to have by far the highest density, 30 plus stories. In other words, you cannot develop below 30 stories. It has to at least be 30 stories tall, if not taller, preferably taller. So in this case, preferably over 40 is the my concept I have for that. And obviously you can adjust this as you want. So it's up for debate how many stories you want to encourage in each area. But as you can see, it depends on the size of the towns and the suburbs. It also depends on where it is located in terms of like how much development is surrounding it and so on. Because again, the idea is you want to strike a very happy balance. And now I have it color coded officially according to the zoning encouragement or incentives. Again, the entire concept is you are basically having all the governments and a lot of the residents push to heavily incentivize developers, big and small. And that includes also landowners and homeowners to develop not single family housing in these zones, but higher density. So medium density and high density developments within these regions. So that way you can much heavily more urbanize and utilize the already pre-existing and developed land areas into much more housing. Now, obviously this can't really, I mean, this can work and this would help a lot, but it wouldn't be perfect. It wouldn't be great, though it would definitely help a lot and be a great first step. The problem is this is only one part of two major and imperative parts to fixing our development patterns and adding to housing and also accessibility and everything else. And that is we need to aggressively force our governments to heavily invest in mass transit, and the mass transit that we, the people who rely on it and who need it all the time and use it all the time, or at least want to, can, and thus have them meet our demands and our needs. We need to have mass transit investment and focus, and it be of and by the people, that is the ridership dominantly, not the car users, not the the motorists who are the ones with the most tax revenue, and thus are always the ones who tend to sway the votes for mass transit funding in this nation and in every state, aka look at ST3's vote map. I cannot encourage you this enough. I keep saying this over the years. You need to look at ST3's, Sound Transit 3's vote map up in the Seattle Puget Sound metro area, because holy shit, is that ever telling. Because almost every single district in every single area within Seattle and the surrounding area that voted in favor for it were the richest and the most car dependent, and the ones that used the cars by far the most because they had by far the most car ownership. The ones that actually voted against it the most and en masse were the poorest and the ones that relied on Sound Transit, the transit agency, along with King County Transit, the most. They voted against it. The transit users, the ridership, voted against it in majority. It was the richer car owning public in areas that voted in favor of it. And unfortunately, they have more tax revenue, so they always get more bias. It's another major problem you have to face. It needs to be in the hands of the ridership, specifically the ones that use it consistently, commonly, and especially those that are reliant on it. From there, that's when you can really build a reliable and quality transit system that people can rely on, and hopefully is very well funded to where it's very widespread and highly frequent service, has true BRT, and runs pretty much anywhere and everywhere. And plenty of the highest used lines, of course, are always 24 hours, 7 days a week. That's a necessity. If you can get both this kind of a concept along with the transit access, then you have the perfect freaking recipe for success in this department. And that is the ultimate utopian vision for how to make this kind of good, logical urbanism work out in the favor of everybody. It is not to get rid of single family zoning. Everybody deserves and needs choice. That's also why I have a strong and undying defense of single family zoning and single family homes. They do need protection so that people have a good amount of balanced choice. And in this case, if you can't tell with the development patterns, it's very well balanced in what is urbanized and higher density and what is still single family and low density. Maybe those include duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes. Maybe they include row houses 2, 3-story apartment buildings. That's still effectively what would equal your single family zoning, low density. So this is, again, more in just basic example for my first prototype, a visualization for you all to be able to tell this concept I have of how to better balance this urbanism idea to increase density. And it bears repeating. I want to make this sure this is very abundantly clear. I am not saying that this is the final concept, and I am not saying that this is actually what I'm advocating for 100%, because actually this is definitely going to go through even more expansion and refinement from me, and I'm sure from plenty of other people. And the main point for mentioning that's a really important piece of this, is all of these major thoroughfares like 99W, 217, Beef Bend, freaking Roy Rogers, Farmington Road, Capitol Highway, 99E, I-5, I-205, I-84, Sandy Boulevard, Gleason, Powell, Division, you name it. All these massive major thoroughfares and freeways, they absolutely should be prioritized and will always, even if it's not depicted here, will always have highly incentivized, middle and high density development depending on where they are and what districts. All the gaps you see along highways, freeways, and major thoroughfares, their corridors, are automatically within these different story dimensions that are incentivized heavily. With that, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I really would love to see a conversation start there and a debate. I would love to see your guys' thoughts on this concept and ideas on how to improve on this and expand on it. Otherwise, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and especially if you take the time as well to not only share this around and ask questions, not just to me, but potentially to other people by sharing this around with them and asking for their input, but in general, taking the time to also comment on this video and letting me know what you think for this idea and how you would expand on it, how you can improve it, what you like or dislike about it, and so on, because it's incredibly valuable. It's a great conversation to have. I would love to see this kind of a concept be more widespread, even if it's completely altered in a very different format. I would love to see your guys' presentations of it and your guys' expansions on this concept. It would be great to see. It's very needed because, again, I feel like in the online urbanism, armchair urbanism and transit communities, there is a huge problem with a lack of diversity and a lack of care and belief, so to speak, about what is right and wrong or what is good or bad, because everybody is pretty reactive. So they're very much just fed up and sick and tired of sprawl. So am I. Very sick and tired of never building up because more views. So am I. Like all of that. And so they want to completely get rid of single family housing and everything else. They also find it to be very entitled. If you decide, oh, I want to freaking build my own home, or I want to live in my own home, or whatever else, they want to make you pay the price. AKA, in other words, basically a form of dictation or coercion. It's, I'm going to try to make it so you have to be like super freaking rich and have a lot of connections, and you got to be willing to pay egregious amounts in if you want to be able to basically go through loopholes that I'm going to create for you to be able to actually do so. You want to make it more expensive and even more out of reach for the average family and the average person to be able to own their own actual home and house, you know, single family. That's a perfect way to do it, is be very extremist about it. So they want to go from the current extreme to the complete opposite extreme, and they don't see it as extremism, but it really is. That's why we need this kind of a concept and these kinds of more middle ground balanced concepts where you're protecting equally against sprawl and highly pushing for and incentivizing very aggressively, hey, we need to freaking increase density rapidly and heavily in our areas because we're just not prioritizing that. So you stop with sprawl, you pretty much ban it and outlaw it, you force everything and everyone and all the developers to build up, while you're also equally putting an emphasis on absolutely giving a complete and utter protection against any of the currently existing single family developments and low density developments from being able to be redeveloped into these high density and medium density building complexes. So everybody has a equal amount of choice, and there's always a great high supply of all kinds and levels of density of housing. So once again, I highly encourage you to leave your comments and your ideas in the comments below. Other than that, once again, thank you so much for watching and taking the time. And I hope to see you in whatever my next video might be. Until then, stay safe and have a good day.